welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we dig in deep to analyze the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. I'm Andy Nelson from thenextreel.com.
And I'm Pete Wright, also from The Next Reel.
We are here, Pete. We are closing out Jon Favreau's 2008 film Iron Man. Holy cow.
Andy, are you going to be able to make it through? Did you bring tissues?
And Iron Man's 11th birthday was just a couple days ago from the date we're recording. So, yeah, 11 years old this film is. But, we're looking at the very end of the film, and we have a special guest to talk with us today. It is Alex Robinson from Star Wars Minute. Hey, Alex.
Welcome.
Hello there.
Wait, was that a little Obi-Wan?
Oh, I'm sure everyone thought it was going to be Nick Fury.
Right.
Alex looks around. Nope, just me. No Nick Fury.
I'm here to recruit you guys for the Minute Initiative that we're putting together with all the best of the Minute hosts.
We're not the only superhero out there. I love it. Yes, on today's show, we are looking at minute 126 of Iron Man. The minute starts with the MPAA stamp of approval, and it ends with the Marvel Studios logo. But let's be honest, we're really here to talk about what's in between those things, right?
Yes.
That's right. This is the first of our post-credit sequences. Right out of the gate, they kick us off with a doozy. We have a little bit of Tony Stark, and walks into his house and discovers that he's got a visitor, as Alex alluded to. Yes, good old Nick Fury has shown up.
Did you guys... Now, I know, Andy, you always stay to the very end of the movies.
I am a credits watcher.
You're a credits watcher. Alex, are you a credits watcher? Did you know this was to stay back when the movie came out?
I don't think I didn't see it until it had been out. I was not I was not an early adapter, so I knew that going in, I knew there was going to be a post-credits scene. Otherwise, I generally bolt as soon as the first credits pop up. So, I mean, the opening credits.
Yeah. Right. Well, and I think that's me too. I'm not generally, or at least I wasn't generally, a credits watcher, and so I saw it only the second time. Probably because Andy told me to stay.
I'm still on the fence of whether or not it's worth sitting there for 5 minutes listening to the music to have literally 15 seconds of just, the Winter Soldier eating a sandwich or something like that. Wow, that was...
Well, they certainly have turned it into a thing because of this. And I know some of the other franchises have kind of toyed around with the whole concept, like, oh, do we need to have one too? Should we be doing this? I know it's something that the DC universe has kind of danced with, and they actually have to make it part of their press tour. Don't worry, we don't have a post-credit sequence. You don't have to stay. It's so funny how it's turned into this whole thing now. And it was always such a rarity when movies had something after the credits. I feel like the first one that I knew of was probably Ferris Bueller.
Yeah.
And then it was just kind of a random thing when there was kind of a little nod to the film at the very end of the credits. It was pretty rare. But again, being kind of a credits watcher, I was always kind of secretly thrilled when I'd be watching the credits and I'd get this little scene and it'd be like me and like maybe one other person in the theater. We'd be like, we're the only ones who know about this secret. It was great. And now it's like this whole thing. And it cracks me up now when you're watching a movie and it's a big franchise movie and all these people stay after the credits kind of hoping that there's going to be something. And then it's just like this massive outcry of disappointment not in Marvel movies, but in other ones when they're like, oh man, there's nothing here. It's like this whole thing now. It's great. Do you guys remember seeing many movies before all this started? Did you guys stay for end credits ever to watch something that you knew was there?
I think Airplane, maybe. That was the first time I ever experienced a post-credits scene.
Yeah, and that was pre-Ferris Bueller.
Yeah. It also has funny credits in the credits, so it gives you something to stick around for besides just an endless list of digital babies that were born during the shoot,
I did not remember this, but the first one that I can't believe I didn't remember this is one of my very favorite movies when I was a kid is the Muppet movie in 1979 had a post-credits scene. I don't even remember what it was but it should be. And then, Airplane in 1980. And then 1987, Masters of the Universe. Skeletor's head emerges from the water at the bottom of a pit saying, I'll be back. That's an auspicious post-credits scene. Yeah, and then Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Very early.
Now everyone does it.
I feel like the Planes, Trains, and Automobiles one kind of had a little bit of it reminded me of the airplane one a bit, because wasn't it the airplane one was the guy still in the taxi who was looking at his watch. He's like, I'm going to give him one more minute or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Something
like that, yeah.
And then Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I think I guess it was kind of different. It was the boss still looking at the pictures, like he never actually got up from his desk, and he's been looking at the artwork that Steve Martin gave him before he ran out to run home for the holidays.
Right.
It's just like a guy sitting there.
The first one actually was before the Muppet movie, The Silencers. I have not seen this movie. Matt Helm lounges on the bed with several scantily clad women while overlaying text reads, "Coming up next, Matt Helm meets lovely Kravitz in Murderer's Row." Never even seen that movie.
Nope, I haven't either.
1966 for connoisseurs of post-credit scenes.
Oh, wow. Well, there you go.
I feel like also the 90s were the time where the post-credits TV show thing first started happening.
Post-credits TV show? I can't think of one.
I know like Roseanne used to do it all the time, where the credits would go and then they would have a little scene after the credits. And sometimes it was like big dramatic stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, but most of the time it was just kind of like a gag refer, but sometimes they would have like genuine like plot developments in the post-credit scene.
I feel like that was something that they started, like I can't picture one in particular, but I do feel like I've remembered them like at the end of a season, like end of the credits, and then you've got like a little tag at the end of the credits that's kind of a hint for what's coming next season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
What's really funny about this little sequence that we have here is that it actually was not originally at the end. Jon Favreau, when he first cut the film, he was up at Skywalker Ranch mixing it, and he had it. The credits start, and it's like that animated bit. It's kind of got all the cool little bits from the movie, and it's the main credits before kind of the bulk of the rest of the credits start. And then, so it was kind of a mid-credit sequence. It was right after the animated credits, and then this dropped in there. And he was up there, and Edgar Wright happened to be there, and they kind of had this Marvel the two of them kind of came out of the gate together with Marvel before Edgar Wright ended up not getting to do any of the MCU films. But Edgar Wright watched it and he said, "Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it." And he said, "But the only thing, just move that last scene, put it at the very end of the credits." And Jon Favreau was like, "Really?" And he's like, yeah, put it at the end. Let people miss it. And Jon Favreau was like, "What? Really?" And so, but he kind of liked the idea. And so he did. And Marvel wasn't keen on it. But what happened is word got out that it was at the very end, and people kept coming back to go see that they had missed it the first time. And Jon Favreau said that he thinks it actually ended up being responsible for about another $10 million at the box office.
Wow.
Sheesh.
So I guess in that particular case, it worked out pretty well for them.
What year so Iron came out in 2008?
Yep, 2008.
So the internet was around then. People didn't just go home and look at it on YouTube or something? They probably could have. I'm sure somebody probably went in. You're going to see it again anyway.
Filmed it with their phone. Yeah, right. Yeah. But it's a really fun little scene, and it's a nice way to kind of hint to everybody. I mean, we already had S.H.I.E.L.D. and everything, so we knew that there was a bigger world that they were creating with this film. But the fact that Sam Jackson shows up as Nick Fury and he says, "I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger initiative." It's just one of those things that is a great way to kind of create this bigger universe, in a very quick line.
Yeah.
Did you guys, Alex, did you know much about the Avengers before this and kind of tracking these guys as characters?
Yeah, I was. I went through a superhero phase when I was a lad, and I've kind of, I'm also, in addition to being a award-winning podcaster, I'm also an award-winning cartoonist, and so I kind of had my hands in both. I was kind of keeping tabs on the superhero scene and stuff. I knew that someone had written and drawn the comic with Samuel Jackson as Nick Fury, and that's what sparked them to get Nick Fury for the movie.
Right.
So it's kind of a weird cart before the horse kind of a thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was a funny twist because Nick Fury originally was a kind of a white character with kind of the gray sideburns. He first appeared in Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos back in May of 1963, created by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. And looking at that those comics, I mean, it is a very early kind of just a kind of World War II fight the Nazis sort of thing, very much in the vein of Captain America and kind of that whole world. In fact, I'm going to blank on the guy's name, but the Irish guy who was fighting with Captain America in that movie, who kind of wears the bowler hat,
Dum Dum Dugan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's one of Sergeant Fury's guys that he's fighting with in that first issue.
One of the Howling Commandos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But then, you're right. It was in the Ultimates when they came out with the Ultimates in 2001. Brian Michael Bendis and Mike Allred, they had modeled the character after Samuel L. Jackson. In fact, to the point where they actually even reference it in the comic. And they actually have a line in there where he says something, I can't remember what it is, but it's something like, they're talking about who would play them in a movie adaptation of themselves. And he's just like, oh, Mr. Samuel L. Jackson, of course, no discussion.
Weird.
Yeah, so it was a very weirdly meta kind of transition to make the character modeled after Samuel L. Jackson, even mention it in the comics, and then have the film team say, let's cast Samuel L. Jackson to play the role.
It would have been funny if they got like a poor man Samuel Jackson.
Who would the poor man Samuel L. Jackson be? Who would that be? Courtney B. Vance?
Courtney B. Vance.
Well, if Wesley Snipes, that's what I was going to say.
Wesley Snipes, that would be, you're absolutely right. That would be it.
So
is he done with his tax troubles? Is he still having tax troubles? Do you guys know?
I thought he was out of jail, I think. I don't know if he still owes money or something.
Wesley.
I don't know what's happened to him. What's been going on with him? I just remembered he was convicted for his income tax issues, and I kind of lost track of him after that.
Yeah, I'm not much of a Snipes head myself, so I feel like I wasn't really tracking him before then.
According to the Wikipedia, he was released from prison in 2013, so he's been out of prison for 6 years now.
Okay, well, hey, there you go. Yeah. But he went in right before this, so I don't think he could have played the role, unfortunately.
It was funny. I remember being blown away by the fact that this was Samuel L. Jackson. I did not know. I hadn't heard that it was coming. The last thing, I guess the last big thing that I knew about Samuel L. Jackson was that he was Mace Windu. And so I saw Snakes on a Plane as a gag, and since apparently he sort of did it as a gag, like that was fun. Black Snake Moan I thought was crazy, and then to see him in the Nick Fury get up, knowing the sort of history that he has with Nick Fury, I was shaken when I saw this the first time. I remember being this is going to be a big deal. One of those moments.
Alex, were you much of a Samuel L. Jackson fan? I know obviously he's been in a number of your conversations around Star Wars, but other than that, I mean, were you a fan of his?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess I like him in some things. He does so many movies that it's not like I rush out and see every Samuel Jackson movie, but I think he's good. I love Pulp Fiction. I love them in. I guess a lot of the Quentin Tarantino movies he's in.
Right.
So yeah. He's a solid, dependable, actor. You know what you're getting. He's a known commodity. You know what you're getting when you see Samuel Jackson. In fact, my brother did not like Samuel Jackson being in Star Wars because he said it was just too distracting. Like he just kept seeing that as Samuel Jackson, being a tough guy.
Well, which is an interesting point because I think that certainly is. Something that's cropped up in other Star Wars films, and I'm trying to think if that's come up in the Marvel films much. Like if there's been an actor who's been cast in any of these films that in kind of a smaller role where people are like, oh, why did they cast him? He's way too distracting in that role. I feel like Laura Dern is like the next one in the Star Wars franchise that really kind of had people up in arms about her popping up in a role where people are like, it seemed very divisive to have her pop up the way she did. I'm trying to think, has that happened in the Marvel franchise much more? I don't feel like it has.
I think in Star Wars it stands out more because Star Wars generally likes to cast unknowns as their leads or little known people. So it's very distracting when the person playing the waiter is more famous than the person playing the hero in the movie. But Marvel tends to go for big names for their people, so it's not as much of doesn't seem like much of an issue.
Sure.
The one that stands out for me, if there is one that stands out, and it feels like a bit of a reach, but it's Natalie Portman in Thor. I remember seeing Thor and thinking, this is a weird casting decision. She's like too big, too indie. I don't know. It just didn't feel right. To me that she was in that. So if there's anything, but that's an interesting point, because I don't feel like Sam Jackson is at all a reach in the Marvel universe, and I'm with your brother. Like he was kind of a stretch for me as Mace Windu in Star Wars.
I mean, I guess I would say that I assume there's no. What's the rule of spoilers in this on the show?
I mean, if it's happened in this film, then we're fine, and if it's been a comic book related thing, but I mean, at this point, we break the rules all the time. So,
well, okay, then I'll say it. You can edit it out if you want to.
Sure.
I thought Jeff Goldblum in Thor was borderline like, okay, is this Jeff Goldblum?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I thought he was great, but I could see how it could also be distracting because he's clearly playing like a very Jeff Goldblum always plays a very Jeff Goldblum-y kind of character.
I can see that too. Like if you don't, I really love Jeff Goldblum, and I think I still get why some would respond that way. I think he's so great in that role because he's Jeff Goldblum in that role.
Yeah.
But man, if you don't truck with Jeff Goldblum, that's hard to watch.
I think he works because of the Taika Waititi comedy level in that film. Like if it wasn't Taika Waititi, like if Kenneth Branagh was directing that film like he did the first one, then I feel like the Jeff Goldblum factor would have been too much for me. But because of the rest of the comedy around it, I think I ended up not having a problem with it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What's interesting about this scene is Robert Downey Jr., when Favreau told him that they were going to be shooting some additional small scenes to kind of, do some nods for the Marvel fans and everything. At the time, he said, you're also going to be shooting one for Hulk too, because that was shooting at the same time. And so he was going to do both of these. But then Jon Favreau said, but it does involve, your house getting broken into. And Robert Downey Jr. was like, are you kidding? After everything I've gone through, why haven't I done something with my security? It doesn't make any sense to me. and Favreau's like, well, it's S.H.I.E.L.D. that broke in. And he's like, it still doesn't make any sense. And then Favreau said, well, Sam Jackson's going to do it, so you're going to do it. And that was kind of his reasoning. And he's like, okay, I can't argue with that, I guess. Yeah. It's Samuel L. Jackson. So
I did write that down on my notes. Is that, in universe, I was wondering, how did he on earth did he break into this multi-billionaire's house? And also, how does Tony Stark not know who Nick Fury is? Like, S.H.I.E.L.D. must be his biggest client to buy technology and stuff. He doesn't know the head of the biggest. They have a helicopter flying around Manhattan, for crying out loud. It's not like a secret organization.
Well, what's funny about that is like when S.H.I.E.L.D. first pops up, like he seems to have no idea who S.H.I.E.L.D. is. And yet in the universe, we've learned that his father was deeply involved with S.H.I.E.L.D. And in the comics, obviously, he was too. So it is kind of a funny thing that they've kind of set this thing up where he has no idea clearly who S.H.I.E.L.D. is the way that it's introduced in the film. So I don't know. It's an odd point of the story that I think when you think about it too much, it just kind of doesn't end up working. But
well, doesn't this fall in the same rule set around like characters who don't know helicopters are coming if the helicopter isn't on screen? Like they can't see what is immediately outside of frame. Like that's kind of it. Robert Downey Jr. or Tony Stark doesn't know that S.H.I.E.L.D. exists until he's framed with the logo or a S.H.I.E.L.D. character. And then suddenly he's allowed to know they exist. I feel like there's a sort of in-frame awareness rule that has to go into play.
I like that.
Right? Because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Not at all. I guess you can kind of write it off as a character thing where that demonstrates his disconnect from Stark Industries as the one who runs the company. Like he is the nutty professor who just invents stuff and has no idea who the clients are early in the film. Like we can kind of, we could make a case there. That seems like a stretch.
Well, I feel like they've made that case from the beginning. It seems like Obadiah Stane is the one who really ran everything. And he was just kind of, not really paying attention to what was going on with the company, just, having fun inventing things and gambling.
Or he's just playing dumb because he doesn't want Nick Fury to know that he knows who Nick Fury is. So,
right. That could be it too.
Yeah.
No, I mean, he does have like the Captain America shield hanging out down in his workshop. So,
well, and that's the ultimate problem, right? If he really doesn't know who S.H.I.E.L.D. is, how does he know who Captain America is?
Right.
Who carries a shield?
Never watch this movie 1 minute at a time.
What's funny is when they filmed this scene, they did it super secretively because they didn't want anybody to know. It was just a skeleton crew. They shot it on a Saturday. And Favreau said, and then the secret got out the next day. No, nobody kept it a secret. And so what he did to combat that is they struck the scene from every screening print that went out, and even the premiere of the movie did not include the scene. So people were very confused. They're like, I thought there was another scene, but it wasn't on it until it actually opened wide. So it's kind of a fun little way to play with everybody.
Yeah. Was that briefly a gimmick to get people to go back to movies? Wasn't that the thing where they they released a movie and now they release it, but like it's a week later, but they've added like one little bit at the end? Am I making that up?
Yeah, they've done that, and I kind of forgot they did. It wasn't with this one, but gosh, I feel like
Incredibles Disney? Or Toy Story or something.
Yeah. I don't know if it was those, but but you're right. It was Disney, and I feel like they did release like one of their animated films that were like now with a new scene or something like that. What was that? I don't know. That's going to bug me now, but I'm pretty sure you're right. Or like a new short film or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How do you Google that?
Well, I don't know if I have much more for the scene. What about you guys?
Well, it wasn't. You had a note in here about Favreau and this idea of how far ahead they pre-plan this kind of stuff, and I think that quote is particularly telling.
Well, is it so? Favreau says, "See, we don't think about this stuff while we're doing it. That's what nobody knows. You're just trying to bail water out of the boat."
I love that because, especially now that we're 22 movies in, everything feels like such amazing alignment of cogs and gears and wheels and things to make this whole sort of universe come together. And I think we take for granted now just how much water bailing there was going on set, and where these brilliant ideas and brilliant setups appear today are just synchronicity and kismet 10 years ago.
Yeah, I believe it.
It's really interesting how these things come together. And I mean, just kind of speaking to the way that these things unfold, like I think it was Louis Leterrier, is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
The director of The Incredible Hulk. There was an article that we had found where he is the one, or he says, the whole idea of doing this crossover, he's the one, he said, I begged Kevin Feige when I knew that Robert got cast. I was like, we have to do crossovers. It's the future of movie making. Now that you have this, I was the one to beg them to do the crossover. They said, Robert's going to be tough to convince, and all that stuff and everything. So eventually I got to talk to Robert and we liked each other, and he said, okay, I've got 5 hours that day. Let's shoot in LA. We were on the way back from Brazil, about to go to the North Pole to shoot the opening sequence with one day in LA, and Iron Man was doing reshoots, and so he came in, and so it's kind of funny that it was Leterrier who really kind of dropped out of the franchise, and his Hulk film is largely seen as kind of the one that doesn't feel the most like it's part of the family, but he's the one who kind of pushed for crossovers, and look what it's done.
Look where we are now.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
And now they got Robert Downey Jr. showing up everywhere, like Spider-Man. He's in all these. For the record, I don't like that Spider-Man has a mechanical Iron Man suit. I don't like that.
No. So you weren't a fan. Have you seen Endgame yet?
I did see Endgame. Yeah.
Yeah. So with all the legs, and then he's got the instant kill mode and everything.
Yeah. It's just like, okay. I mean, I guess you got to power him up if he's going to be competing on a cosmic level, but
did that happen in the comics? Because I was trying to remember if he ever did have an iron spider suit.
I'm sure at some point or another it happened. I mean, every combination of characters has probably happened by this point, but not my Spider-Man, that's for sure.
Right. It's not mine.
Not my Spider-Man.
Right. Get off my lawn in that
somebody
iron spider
hashtag suit. That. Yeah.
So you were a reader of comics, though, right, Alex? Were you keeping up with the comics and the films, or where was your line with all of these movies as they were coming out?
By this time, I was pretty much only just doing the movies. Just because I had lost track of superhero comics. Occasionally, I'd read something like I read the Ultimates, which kind of was really the sort of, I think, probably the biggest inspiration for the Avengers movies and so on. I would read stuff that people suggested to me to check out, but I'll always have I guess I still have enough of the knowledge where I can, when they throw in deep cut references, like, they'll mention, some obscure character, in a folder or something, I'll be like, oh, I know he's the Fixer, and and that kind of nerd, endorphins get going. But I haven't really kept up that much with the current stuff. So there's just
what
so
about
much.
The movies? Were you keeping up with all the movies as they came out?
I was at first, and then I kind of I started to tell myself, I'm like, well, you know what, I might just be that I really just don't like superhero movies very much, because I always found them kind of like boring by the end. Like when it comes down to two CGI guys beating up on each other, like I don't know, it just too many of the Marvel movies these days seem to end with them fighting endless armies of gray CGI monsters that are, utterly disposable and stuff. So, but then I think a friend of mine, I became friends with this guy, and he was really into them. And I was like, all right, I'll go watch some of these movies. And that was when I started getting back more into it. And I loved Thor Ragnarok, and I was like, I want all the Marvel movies to be like this from now on. And so that's pretty much when, if I see a Marvel movie, you can tell how much I like or dislike it compared to how much it reminded me of Ragnarok.
So it's got to have that peak levels of comedy for you.
I have a hard time taking superhero problems very seriously, just because, like, ultimately, it's like at some point this person's like, you know what I should do? I should put on pajamas and fight crime. Like, no person thinks that. So, like, there's always a certain level of like, this is just silly. Why do you have a cape?
Oh, right. Were you a fan of the Kick-Ass movies then?
Yeah, I thought I didn't see the second one. I thought the first one was a lot of fun.
Yeah, because I think that kind of takes it and spins it a little bit in a different direction.
Yeah, that's true. And in fact, nowadays I'm more. When I quit reading superhero comics, it was because I hated all the fight scenes and I wanted more character development. And now at this end of things, like, I don't like the character development.
Yeah.
I liked Infinity War more than I liked Endgame, because Infinity War had a lot of those comic book, like, oh, look, it's Doctor Strange fighting Iron Man, and that kind of weird, it's a tradition in superhero comics. Anytime two superheroes meet who don't know each other, they have to fight immediately until they realize that they're on the same side. And,
that's right. Yeah. Welcome a new dog to the dog park. You're going to get the same thing.
Yes, exactly. So Endgame didn't have as much of that, so I didn't like it as much.
I see. Gotcha. We've been doing the IMDb game with our guests about the new actors who have popped up, and this is our chance with Samuel L. Jackson, since this is the only time he shows up in the film. Are you familiar with the IMDb game at all?
No. Please, well, I am, but maybe tell the listeners in case they don't know.
Sure. So the IMDb game, IMDb lists 4 films at the top of each actor's page that it says that they are known for. And IMDb, of course, uses an algorithm that nobody quite understands to pick the 4 films that it lists for them. So, Alex, if you had to guess, what would you say are the 4 films that IMDb says Samuel L. Jackson is known for?
Oh, boy. My first guess would be Pulp Fiction.
Okay. All right.
Oh, you don't tell me if it's right or not?
I'm not going to say until you give me 4.
Okay. In that case, I will say Pulp Fiction. I will say Infinity. Oh, no, he's barely in Infinity Gauntlet. So is it just? It has to be a movie that they're prominently featured in, right?
You never. It's a very obscure thing, and I mean, normally it is, but not all the time.
All right, I'll say Pulp Fiction, Avengers, classic, Episode 1 of Star Wars.
Okay.
And Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think he's in that one. Ant-Man, then. He has got to be an Ant-Man, right?
I don't think he. Was he in Ant-Man? I don't think he's in Ant-Man.
I don't think he's in Ant-Man.
All right, then let's say Winter Soldier. I know he's in that one.
He's in Winter Soldier, yes.
Okay, there you go. There's my 4 choices.
Interestingly, he does not have a single film from the Marvel Cinematic Universe represented in his top 4.
All right.
But does he have a Star Wars represented in his top 4?
He does not have a Star Wars film in there either.
Are they all Tarantino movies?
It is not, but there's one that is the one that's thrown in as the surprise. We have Pulp Fiction, so there's no surprise with that one, I think. Mm-hmm. The Hateful Eight, which is his newest film that's on the list.
Are you going to say Snakes on a Plane, Andy?
I am. Snakes on a Plane is number 3.
Wow.
And then Jackie Brown is number 4. So that's the 4 that IMDb has. I love Jackie Brown too. It's a great movie.
Wow. So no Nick Fury.
No Nick Fury and no Mace Windu.
That's crazy.
Yeah, kind of an odd list.
IMDb.
Well, he is in a lot of stuff, to be fair. I mean, those are all recognizable things, except maybe the Hateful Eight.
How many credits does he have? Do you still have the page open?
Yeah, he has 130 credits right now up on IMDb. So he's he's been a busy boy, and that's just his movie acting credits. He has TV, video game. I mean, there's plenty of other things that he's been involved in. So
Capital One commercials.
Yeah, Capital One. What is in your wallet?
That would be sad if it was down to his Capital One commercial appearances. That's one of the things he's known for. Well, Alex, so you haven't seen all the films of the MCU, but you've seen a number of them. Do you think you have a ranking of any of them? I know that you like Infinity War more than Endgame, but what about any of the others? Would you have a favorite?
I think I've seen a bit of every one of them. So
okay.
Some of them I've seen the whole thing. Some of them I've seen chunks of. So the question is, rank them all.
All 22.
Okay, start at the bottom. Attack of the Clones.
No, but of the ones that you've seen that you really like, do you have a top 5? Would you say?
All right, I'll say Ragnarok. Obviously, I already explained that one. I'll say Infinity War.
Oh, okay.
And then I guess maybe Black Panther.
That's a good one.
Oh, you know what? I haven't seen the Spider-Man movie, and everyone tells me that that's really good.
Yes, that's accurate.
So I'll put that as number 3. I remember liking the first Thor when I saw it, but it's been a while.
Thor is a divisive character, but his films are divisive. But I'm I'm partial to the first one too.
I think at the time I was really going through a big Jack Kirby phase, and I'm still going through a Jack Kirby phase. But I like the fact that it was kind of pompous and the complete opposite of Ragnarok. It took itself very seriously and so on. At least that's how I remember it. But
well, Kenneth Branagh was directing it like it was one of his Shakespeare films, I think.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Then after that it becomes kind of, I guess, Avengers, classic Avengers.
Okay.
They all just kind of become a mishmash after that. Like, the bits and pieces that I like. I love the big battle in Civil War.
Where does Iron Man fall on your list? Is it one that you're partial to, or is it kind of one that you're not so in love with?
It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I remember liking it at the time. I this is going to sound like blasphemy, but I have very mixed emotions about Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just sometimes he just comes across as just a little too smarmy for me. He skirts that edge of being charismatically a McGlib smart guy kind of a thing, and sometimes I like it and sometimes I don't like it. So that's the problem I have with the Iron Man movies.
Interesting.
It's a funny thing too. I think at watching so much press now about Iron Man as a character and what happened in Endgame, and seeing Robert Downey Jr. It feels so much like he has taken on the role of Tony Stark as Robert Downey Jr. in real life. I find that a little bit strange. Like when you see him talking about the movie as Robert Downey Jr., he feels now inseparable from the character of Tony Stark. It's that guy. And I guess the thing I'm most excited about for Robert Downey Jr. as an actor post Endgame is to see him in stuff that isn't Marvel again. Because, I love some of his earlier work that was so exciting, and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and let's see more of that kind of stuff and see if he remembers how to not be Tony Stark for a couple of films.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. It just seems like he's kind of playing himself, or it's yeah, I don't know what it is about it, but I think it's envy.
Yeah, it's an interesting point how he really kind of the way that Tony Stark ended up being. I mean, the performance of Tony Stark ended up being very different from the way he was written in the comics. He wasn't nearly as smarmy or ironic, and was just kind of a regular guy. And even the comics kind of adapted the Tony Stark character to be much more Robert Downey Jr. like after this film came out. And so it's interesting how he has kind of morphed the character into a whole new persona. And I think you're right. I mean, really, a lot of his persona, of Robert Downey Jr.'s persona, has been imbued in this character. And so it will be interesting to see what he ends up doing now that he's kind of moving on from the Marvel franchise. But it is something I can totally see. Like if you kind of aren't a fan of kind of that kind of ironic, kind of that smarmy sense of humor and the way that he kind of plays the character, I can see why it wouldn't be a character that you would be as interested in. So I get it.
I think actually I think the funny parts are the parts I like of when he's playing smarmy, but when he plans to play sincere, that is when it gets into real trouble. Like that Iron Man 3 where he like adopts an orphan kid and stuff like that. Like, what on earth was that about? I assume you guys are going to get to that eventually.
Yeah, eventually.
Definitely taking on kind of the Bruce Wayne role with that was his Robin.
Right. That was his Robin.
So that was one that I did not watch the entire movie. Whatever wound up happening with that kid?
Well, he
got a bunch of toys.
Yeah, he kind of, what does he do? He helps Tony kind of get himself back in shape and get back into the fight. And then, at the end, Tony gives him a whole garage of things to work with and stuff.
And then he just disappears.
And then we see him showing up in Endgame.
Yeah, he's at the end of Endgame.
Okay.
Yeah.
He must have been really jealous when Peter Parker showed up, and now suddenly Peter Parker's giving Peter Parker like suits and inviting him to go on exciting adventures and stuff.
Exactly.
I want to see that now. I want to see him become a villain for Spider-Man.
That's right. We need a whole like Mickey Rourke suit up kind of thing, but it's that kid, he's just watching from his little garage.
Right. He liked me first.
He did. Mr. Stark. Mr. Stark.
One thing that I think is interesting about Star Wars, and I would really love for the Marvel Universe to do this, is that because Star Wars doesn't like reboot, at least not yet, you can have those kind of like long stories where someone who was young in one story is now old and so on. And I hope Marvel doesn't reboot because obviously Spider-Man they reboot it every 6 months. I think they have contractually obligated to him and the Joker every 6 months. But it would be interesting to see actually, like if they did another movie 20 years from now and actually had Tony Stark's former orphan be the bad guy and call back to all that stuff. But I feel like by that time they'll be like, well, we need a new Avengers for the new generation, and now we have all these kids on YouTube are now playing the Avengers.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because now it feels like we have an opportunity maybe for that, right? We have kids of some of these characters. We have Morgan Stark. We have Hawkeye's daughter. Like all of these who in the comics Scott Lang's daughter. They all have fodder for future properties, because it's all in canon. Everything's in canon,
and they've already gone through the trouble of doing this big orchestrated continuity. It seems such a shame to just throw it away.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
That is interesting, though. It'd be interesting to see, as things progress. I mean, it's going to be tricky, I think, with a couple of the characters, not to spoil too much from Endgame, but it'll be interesting to see as, years go by in the real world, who they call back to kind of bring back into the fold, a la all the Star Wars ones, like you were just saying, like Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher, and just kind of bringing them back in to rehash their old roles decades later. It'll be interesting to see what Marvel does and how they kind of revisit that. And certainly, I mean, they've gotten really good already at kind of bringing characters into their films and youngifying them. We've had plenty of that. So it'll be interesting to see if they continue doing that.
Yeah. I worry a little bit that the technology to youngify actors is we're on the verge of using it for evil. If there's a line, we are dangerously close to crossing it, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It'll happen.
Well, I think we should wrap this up, unless you guys have anything else to say about this particular minute.
No, although I will say it's funny. I when you guys sent me the minute, I was like, let me see what minute they gave you. I was like, oh, they just gave me credits. No, well, that's not so bad. And then I totally forgot there's this scene. So so thank you for giving me such a iconic minute as this one. I feel like it's an honor. So I hope I did it justice.
Well, it was a fun minute to talk about, and we were thrilled to have you on the show to talk about it with us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Well, Alex, do you want to remind everybody where they can find you out there online?
Sure. I am the co-host of a podcast called Star Wars Minute. That's where we do to the Star Wars movies what you guys did to Iron Man here. You can check that out at starwarsminute.com or find it wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. You can also go to my website, comicbookalex.com, where you can find out all of my other projects, including my graphic novels and my other podcast, Godfather Minute, which is a hockey podcast. No, it's actually like this, but we talk about The Godfather instead.
Which is a good one.
So many minutes.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot of minutes.
We are currently about 92 minutes into it, I think. So we have about another year and a half left to go, because we only do one episode a week, so it's going to take us a while.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then on to part 2.
Awesome.
That's fantastic. What a great set.
It is. Well, Pete, that's it. We're at the end of Iron Man. Can you believe it?
We made it. We
did
126 minutes, Andy. Congratulations.
Congratulations, fellas.
Thank you.
I can't believe that you're in season 7 of these.
Because when did you start your first? When was your first minute published, Alex?
I think 2013.
2013.
We've done one movie per year, roughly. So
yeah.
So yeah,
that's fantastic. God, it's just great. Yeah, I can't believe we did it. And Andy, I got to tell you, I'm already looking forward to Hulk. I gave it trouble. I think I insinuated that it was a troublesome film, and I can't wait to say that out loud in season 2.
Well, I guess I'm looking forward to that.
It's going to be funny. I will tell you this, as a teaser, it's a better movie than I remembered. How's that?
Hey, there you go. That's the way it is. See, this is our little tease at the end, right?
Is this Ang Lee's Hulk or the Ed Norton Hulk?
The Ed Norton one. That's the one that's in the MCU canon. Okay, so Ang Lee's is not considered part of it, but we may do that as a hiatus episode. That'd be a fun one to revisit for that. Well, everybody, that is it for season 1 of Marvel Movie Minute. Thank you so much for taking the journey with us. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help get the word out. We'd appreciate it. Share it with friends, family, coworkers, your local barista, whoever it may be in your life. As we alluded to, we will be back with the Incredible Hulk next year. And watch your feed. We're going to throw out some hiatus episodes between now and then just to keep your bellies full. Until next time, true believers.